And at 10, SCP-191. SCP-191, also known as the Cyborg Child, is a female human child of unknown age. Well, to us anyway. The Foundation knows, but they haven't redacted. It is believed to have been the test subject of several experimental surgeries performed by a now deceased doctor of unknown name. 80% of the left half of her face and skull have been removed, with the eye and ear replaced by a complex transceiver system that allows it to receive and transmit not only visual and auditory input, but a wider spectrum of electromagnetic radiation ranging from a low-frequency radio to high-energy gamma rays. The lower jaw, teeth, and larynx have been removed as well. The esophagus has been rerouted to an artificial orifice in the back of the neck, which is a feeding tube, and the trachea rerouted directly to an air filtration device. This seems like something that Afton would do in order to keep his family alive or to bring them back from death. Like, this is what's hiding in William's basement, and Crying Child is the Cyborg Child this time around. And at 9, SCP-699. SCP-699 is a clear rectangular case 2.5 meters by 1.5 meters by 1 meter in size. Engraved on the side is the SCP Foundation Keter symbol and SCP-17591. The artifact appears to be made of plexiglass, but it is in fact a super dense polymer much stronger and heavier than any material currently manufactured. The weight of the object is estimated at around 24,000 kilograms. SCP-699 shows no seams in its construction and no obvious means of opening it. It has resisted all attempts to open, damage, or acquire a sample of the material and it is composed of. Attempts to acquire a small sample of the material so that it can be reproduced, though, are still ongoing. Does this sound familiar at all? A strange box that we can't open? Well, how about this? Quote, the contents of SCP-699 are under investigation and currently in dispute amongst researchers. Oh yeah, baby, that's right, the FNAF 4 box! However, the contents of SCP-699 are apparently telepathic and appear different to most observers, depending on their desires and psychological state. So maybe that's what's going on with the FNAF 4 box as well. Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. And at 8, SCP-838. SCP-838 is a collective term for a series of job ads appearing in newspapers that print in the vicinity of Chicago, and whatever agency is behind them. The job offered varies between instances and has included positions in accounting, management, and janitorial work, among others. These ads are entirely mundane unless responded to. Attempts to trace these classifieds have also proven unsuccessful. The next time a person who has responded to SCP-838 falls asleep, he or she immediately enters REM sleep. The affected individual reports experiencing extremely vivid dreams of having a job interview for the advertised job in a large windowless office building. Anyone hired by Pellis Inc., which is the company behind this, is to be considered part of SCP-838-1. Those not offered jobs are unaffected. When members of SCP-838-1 sleep during the week, they report vivid dreams of working in what is believed to be the same building that the interview took place in. In these dreams, the workforce of Pellis seems to consist entirely of people who have responded to these ads. Could this perhaps explain why we keep going back to this same job where we almost die over and over again, and why our alarm is a grandfather clock, and why we only stay until 6 AM? Could this be a real dream brought on by SCP-838? I don't know. Sounds like Dream Theory level 2.
Number 7. Gengar. Gengar is the final evolution of Ghastly, evolving from Haunter. Gengar seems like a perfect fit for the FNAF verse in my mind because it looks so cuddly but is also known for being deadly. It is a dual ghost and poison type Pokemon who is known for being mischievous and for devouring the dreams of those it preys on. Generally, Gengar only comes out at night, which also seems to fit pretty well considering the main stories that we play through generally take place at night in FNAF. I think Gengar is the perfect combination of one who seems like it could be fun and friendly, but is actually much more sinister than it looks, much like the animatronics featured in FNAF. Number 6. Blastoise. Blastoise is another Pokemon that by itself is not really that frightening, but in the world of FNAF would be a terrifying one to face off against. Just look up pictures of a robot version of Blastoise, because there's art for that, and you will see what I'm talking about. This Pokemon is by far one of the most terrifying in this reimagined form. Either way you look at it, robot or organic, Blastoise is just a Pokemon that means business, coming ready to fight and armed with its cannons, which launch water at its opponents. Its Hydro Blasts are powerful enough to break through concrete or steel, so I want to imagine what they might do to a security guard working the night shift at Freddy's. I feel like you'd be pretty messed up with those water cannons. Number 5. Bisharp. Something about the fact that Bisharp already looks like a razor-clad automaton makes me feel pretty uneasy about this Pokemon. Bisharp has blades for feet and arms and blades in its torso. It's a combo dark and steel type Pokemon. I don't know about you, but other than ghost Pokemon, I don't think there are two better types, especially when blended together, that seem to encompass the feel of the FNAF universe. Like if animatronics were Pokemon, they'd probably be dark and steel types too. You know what I mean? Number 4, Mega Beedrill. Bzzz. I know that Beedrill is an insect Pokemon, but we don't really have any insect animatronics, which is actually why I'd kind of like to see this one in the FNAF universe. I just think insects, especially ones with stingers, can be pretty creepy and dangerous and scary, and animatronics with their ability to jump scare and crush you are also pretty horrific, like insects, but different. So these seem like two worlds that could collide well. Mega Beedrill is the Mega Evolved version of Beedrill and basically just looks more frightening with more pointed drills and no spindly insect legs. It also just looks like an angrier version of Beedrill. Mega Beedrill, while not at the height of some of the animatronics, is also bigger than the regular Beedrill counterpart. I feel like a giant flying bee or wasp looking animatronic with drills for arms sounds pretty terrifying.
Getting close to the end in number 3, SCP-053. SCP-053, aka the young girl, appears to be a small 3-year-old girl. She is capable of basic speech and appears to be slightly above average in mental development. She has a generally pleasant personality and rarely seems upset, becoming agitated only in the presence of groups of people. Any and all humans over the age of 3 who make eye contact, physically touch, or remain around SCP-053 for longer than 10 minutes will rapidly become irrational, paranoid, and homicidal. Most, if not all of these feelings will be directed at 053, and afflicted subjects will attempt to kill 053 after first killing or driving off all humans visible to them. Those attempting to kill 053 will suffer massive heart attacks or seizures and die seconds after doing any physical damage to SCP-053. The SCP will also regenerate almost instantaneously from any wound, regardless of severity. So yeah, if her being 3 years old wasn't enough to be in FNAF, since apparently that's like the ideal age for a victim, like Charlotte was, which now that I think about it, this could just be Charlie, but she also causes anyone around her for prolonged periods of time to want to mass murder. So yeah, that's FNAF material if you ask me. Penultimately, in number 2, SCP-017. SCP-017, aka the Shadow, is a humanoid figure approximately 80 centimeters in height, anatomically similar to a child, but with no discernible identifying features. SCP-017 seems to be composed of a shadowy, smoke-like shroud. No attempt to find any object beneath the shroud has been successful, but the possibility has not been ruled out. SCP-017's reaction to shadows cast upon it is immediate and swift, as SCP-017 leaps at the object casting the shadow and completely encloses it in its shroud, whereupon it returns to its normal size, leaving no trace of the object it attacked behind. And this is the kind of thing that I honestly expect the ghosts to do in the FNAF universe. Like, if we really think about how the ghosts of the original 5 victims would act, I think it would be similar to this. I mean, this is kind of how they attacked Apted, right? Especially if the shadow looks like a small child. It would also fit into the universe in that sense. However, there would also have to be like 5 instances of it, but that's fine. It makes sense to me. And finally, in at number 1, SCP-173. SCP-173, aka Peanut, is probably the most famous SCP out there. It is constructed from concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. SCP-173 is animate and extremely hostile despite looking like a statue. The object, though, cannot move while within a direct line of sight. Line of sight must not be broken at any time with SCP-173. SCP assigned to enter their container are instructed to alert one another before blinking, because there must be at least 2 individuals. Object is reported to attack by snapping the neck at the base of the skull or by strangulation. Personnel report sounds of scraping stone originating from within the container when no one is present inside. This is exactly how Foxy acts in FNAF 1 if you think about it. You have to keep checking in on him to make sure that he doesn't come sprinting at you to break your neck or whatever, however the animatronics kill you. Sure, with Foxy you don't need to have eyes on at all times, but Peanut would basically fit in perfectly in the FNAF world, and he's honestly the reason I came up with and started this list to begin with, so yeah, do it. And at 10, Donald Harvey. Harvey belonged to a group of psychos known as the Angels of Mercy, who claimed to kill for the benefit of their victim. Harvey was convicted of 37 of his more than 57 suspected murders, and he had also confessed to as many as 87. When Harvey was hired at Cincinnati VA Medical Hospital, he managed to collect over 30 pounds of cyanide, which he kept in his home. He also kept diaries and detailed notes on each of his victims, including how he killed them. This gives me intense William Afton vibes, okay? Not for some certain reasons, but for the delusion of him thinking that he was doing it for the victim's benefit, but still doing it in horrifying ways. It's the exact same kind of delusion that I could see William having, and a similar delusion to what he seems to have in the games. In the books, I don't think he's like this exactly, but his game version certainly seems the type, especially given his appearance in the Foxy Go 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 minigame where he's smiling. And at 9, Raincoat Killer. Hailing from the Deadly Premonition universe, this video game villain is the launching point for the game's story. The murder of Anna Graham sparked renewed interest in the legend of the Raincoat Killer. After the arrival of FBI agent Francis York Morgan, Harry began to keep a close eye on the case, intervening at seemingly random moments. He uses his aide, Michael Tolleson, to convey messages to York, telling him to take it slow and to keep his mind open to all possibilities. As York tried to solve the case, the new killer showed up many times. As more evidence surfaced, it became clear that George Woodman was the new Raincoat Killer. He had sacrificed the woman of Greenvale in order to become immortal. Unfortunately for him, York was able to defeat him, ending the terror of the Raincoat Killer. Much like how, in the novels at least, William is searching for immortality thanks to the discovery of Remnant, and then is defeated by the Springtrap suit and Henry's multiple fires. Okay, well, he would have been defeated if he wasn't possessed by his son, but I mean, like, there's still a parallel there, right? And at 8, The Ice Cream Man. Suggested to me by Amanda, the Ice Cream Man comic series is a horror anthology of loosely connected stories that all share the common link of a mysterious ice cream man named Rick, who's also revealed to be Ricardus, who, while a seemingly ordinary ice cream man, possesses inexplicable powers which he uses upon unsuspecting people. Rick's nemesis Caleb, a man dressed in an all-black cowboy outfit, will sporadically appear in the series trying to thwart Rick's plans, sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully. Honestly, this kind of story is very reminiscent of William Afton and Henry's story, Afton being the ice cream man, which is ironic given what happened to Elizabeth, and Henry is Caleb trying to thwart William's plans, sometimes successful and sometimes not. But no matter what, William always comes back, just like the Ice Cream Man. And Ice Cream Man is very close to how I feel William acts with his victims. Like, he's all like warm and fuzzy, and then he just shoves you in the back of his freezing cold van and drives off. And at 7, SCP-978. SCP-978 appears to be a standard red and black Polaroid Super Color 645 CL instant camera, with no distinctive identifying marks or damage. SCP-978 operates the same as a standard camera, and shows no anomalous behavior beyond the photographs it produces. When a subject is pictured with SCP-978 though, the photograph that develops shows not what the subject was doing at the time of the photo, but rather what the subject wanted to be doing. Unless what they wanted to be doing was what they were doing. Now, unlike 838, I don't think that this would really help explain anything, but the sheer amount of power an object like this would have to someone like William Afton is horrifying. Like, oh, let's take a picture of you and Bonnie. Click, finds out what they really want to be doing. Oh hey, I have the exact thing that you want to be doing in the back room, come follow me. Or hell, even like just us as the player, we can find out what Afton really frickin' wants for once. And maybe we can finally get some goddamn answers. Especially since this works on animals too, so maybe it can work on like spirits? I don't know, the Foundation hasn't tested that yet. They tested it on rabbits. Apparently all they want to do is bang. I'm not kidding, there's actually like a log that talks about them taking a picture of a rabbit, and it was just them mating with another rabbit. And at 6, SCP-423. SCP-423 has no physical form. It appears to exist entirely within textual narratives. It was discovered in a used bookstore in Texas in a copy of Tom Sawyer. The book seemed perfectly normal except for the inclusion of a character named Fred, who was not known to exist in any other version of the story. However, it was not until it was left by a copy of Moby Dick that the anomalous structure of SCP-423 became clear. 423 is able to enter textual narratives, inserting themselves as a minor character. The details of the character vary from story to story, but it is always a character named Fred, or something similar, and its role in the story is usually minor. Physical descriptions of the character are rare, but it usually appears as a human male of average height and middle years. However, this can change depending on the nature of the narrative. But Fred has been a character in FNAF forever, so I mean this doesn't really mean much. So this could honestly just be a fun way of introducing a new character. Or instead, this could be a riff on Jeremy. So that's why there are multiple characters named Jeremy in the series so far. One of them is this Fred guy, but I don't know, it's just a thought. Halfway through into number 5, SCP-309. SCP-309 is a small plush stuffed animal that looks as if it has been turned completely inside out. Gold-orange fur is present along the seams, while a small amount of cotton stuffing and 2 protruding eyes are visible on its head. The interior of SCP-309 is understuffed with cotton, giving it a flexible and cuddly feel. SCP-309 has no effect on inanimate objects, however contact with living subjects is both dangerous and sometimes life-threatening. Humans and animals lightly brushing against SCP-309 with a finger or a similarly small portion of the body displays severe, non-localized discomfort for tens of minutes afterwards. Humans also report feeling extreme nausea despite the fact that 309 does not induce vomiting. If SCP-309 is pressed firmly against the subject or the subject quickly picks up SCP-309 and attempts to hold it, the subject will be violently and painfully turned inside out within 10 seconds. Which I feel like at this point is pretty par for the course in FNAF's world, okay? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. FNAF's world. This could just be a way for William to get out of the goddamn Springtrap suit, honestly. That's what I would use it for. In at 4, SCP-1048. SCP-1048 is a small teddy bear, approximately 33 centimeters in height. Through testing, composition of the subject revealed no unusual qualities that make it discernible from a non-sentient teddy bear. Subject is capable of moving on its own accord and can communicate through a small range of gestures. The subject regularly shows affection to individuals in ways found endearing by most people. Affection is usually given in the form of a hug to the lower leg, but subject has also been observed dancing, jumping in place, and in 2 separate events, it has even drawn childlike pictures for janitorial staff. All Foundation personnel that have interacted with the subject have responded positively to its affection, even D-Class personnel with normally psychopathic tendencies. However, SCP-1048-A is where things wander into FNAF territory. Since 1048-A is a small teddy bear of similar size and shape to 1048, however, this A variant is made completely out of human ears and will go around causing anyone that comes within a 10-meter radius to grow ear-like appendages, extremities, whatever, all over their body. Joy. Do I really need to explain why this should be in FNAF? Maybe William could finally get some flesh on his bones again. Literally. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Joey Drew Studios. Joey Drew Studios, from the Bendy and the Ink Machine series, also known as The Workshop and The Old Workshop, is an American corporation and animation studio established in 1929. This is where he and his friend Henry Stein, along with all the other workers, collaborated for 30 years before the studio's downfall, producing a series of Bendy cartoons. In 1946, Joey Drew Studios was under investigation after reports of hazardous work environments, missing employees, harassment, and excessive back pay, as well as the company's danger of being bankrupt. All of which are the result of Joey's mismanagement of the studio. Anonymous employees threatened to make labor unions over the poor conditions, which included unpermitted buildings, hazardous electrical wiring, and a plumbing system prone to bursting, which sounds exactly like the working conditions that would be in some form of Fazbear establishment. Plus, there's a machine that takes human souls and turns them into ink monsters, like how the animatronics get infused with the souls of the missing children. I feel like that connection was kind of expected on the list. But ultimately, in at number 2, Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is a fictional character created by novelist Thomas Harris. Lecter is a serial killer who eats his victims. Before his capture, he was actually a respected forensic psychiatrist, and after his incarceration he is consulted by FBI agents Will Graham and Clarice Starling to help them find other serial killers. His most iconic appearance being in Silence of the Lambs and the often misquoted line of "Hello Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?" And while you may not be able to find any similarities between Afton and Lecter, this one is actually confirmed as inspiration, at least for his voice. According to his voice actor PJ Haywood, in Sister Location, Afton's voice is inspired by Hannibal Lecter, in a way that he's unnervingly calm even when he's about to kill someone, which is supported by some of his novel counterparts' quotes. So yes, while it's not directly inspiring Afton, it inspired his voice. And finally, in at number 1, Robert Burdella. Robert Burdella is to me the seemingly perfect inspiration for William Afton. Not only did this man own a business called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, where he reportedly sold human human skulls, he also seemingly started killing in 1984. The MO is certainly not the exact same. Burdella would drug and kidnap men that he met at bars or on the streets, but the same idea of killing people you meet in a restaurant is carried over to William Afton. There is no confirmed inspiration for William, but there are certainly a decent amount of similarities between these two. In fact, if you combine the 4 real serial killers I put on this list, Harvey, Dillon, Gacy, and Burdella, you would end up getting basically a real William Afton. I didn't go into much detail with these because, well, YouTube might get mad at that, especially when I'm comparing them to a fictional serial killer from a video game series, but who knows? Either way, I think it's a pretty solid combo of 4 killers, and that's kind of freaky. And at 10, Brian Wells. This is certainly an interesting case that you may not really think relates to William, but let me explain my thought process. Brian Douglas Wells was an American pizza delivery driver who was killed during a complex bank robbery plot. The plot involved a collar bomb, a scavenger hunt, the robbery itself, and a pizza delivery man. Following an attempt to rob PNC Bank, Wells was surrounded by police. That's when the bomb around his neck ended up detonating, killing him. And while his family denies that he was a part of it, investigators and a federal prosecutor concluded that Wells was a knowing participant in the bank robbery. However, he was told that the bomb was fake, and he did not know that his co-conspirators intended for him to die. Now, I think that it was probably detonated because he got caught and they didn't want him to rat on them, and that is the prevailing theory amongst these people as well, amongst the prosecutor and whatnot. But aside from being a pizza delivery man for Mamma Mia's Pizzeria, what possible connection could he have to Afton? Well, being killed by a device that was supposed to be safe, for one, the spring locking and the collar, being betrayed by your peers, in William's case most likely Henry, and the affinity for complex plans. I feel like this may have been at least a slight source of inspiration, especially since this came up when I searched for pizza place serial killers, because I was hoping that there would be one. That's weird to say. Let's just move on. And at 9, Andrew Cunanan. Andrew Cunanan was born in San Diego, California, and eventually settled in San Francisco's Castro district and socialized with older, wealthy gay men while indulging heavily in illicit substances. It's unclear what set him off, but he began a cross-country killing spree of 5 unknown victims, the last of which was actually fashion designer Gianni Versace. Cunanan killed himself on a Miami boathouse in 1997, and if that didn't set off an alarm, congratulations, you have not been ruined by FNAF yet. However, William Afton also had 5 victims at least, but definitely only had 5 when FNAF 1 and even around FNAF 2 was released. And while FNAF 1 does take place in 1993, many have theorized it to instead take place in 1997, which is unlikely given the minimum wage of the times and the connection to another real person, but nonetheless, it's certainly an interesting case of more possible dates lining up and the same number of victims. You know, a lot of people on this list are actually going to have 5 victims, and it's extremely creepy. And at 8, Nathan Dunlap. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, who was the manager of this Chuck E. Cheese, was tallying receipts in the back room. While she was doing that, Bobby Stevens was scrubbing down the kitchen, and Ben Grant, Colleen O'Connor, and Sylvia Crawwell were all working in the main party area. However, there was someone hiding in the bathroom, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap, who earlier that year had begun working as a cook, but was fired after an argument over his hours. But this time he was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Then he went into the kitchen where he shot Bobby, although Bobby ended up surviving and was actually a key witness in his case. Then Nathan went to the back room where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains, but thanks to the security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death. Thanks to MatPat and his first game theory on FNAF, this one is fairly well known, hence why it's closer to the top, but if I didn't include it, I feel like everyone in the comments would have asked me why, so there you go. And at 7, Norman Osborn. Another suggestion from Amanda that I'm surprised I didn't think of first. Norman Osborn being the Green Goblin, but also the CEO of a very successful company, it seems like these two share a lot of the same ideas, or I guess rather the same concepts. Business owner who by night is evil and wreaks havoc without anyone really knowing it. But despite their secrecy, eventually people catch on and find out their secrets. Superpowers in the form of a goblin serum or being possessed by your dead son, so the two characters at the fundamental level are actually very much alike. The specifics aren't, which is really what threw me off, but it's a part of why we wanted Willem Dafoe to play Afton in the FNAF movie, right? Because he played this kind of character before with Norman, plus Norman and Afton kind of sound the same, just a little bit though. Osborn and William don't, but William and Willem do, so who knows at this point. And at 6, Thomas Lee Dillon. Thomas Lee Dillon was a serial sniper found guilty of killing 5 people. Directed by the voices in his head, Dillon killed people randomly. According to attending psychiatrists, Dillon's delusions of grandeur spilled over into the reality of his life and the lives of his victims. His victims were killed by a high-powered rifle while they participated in outdoor activities, sometimes hundreds of miles from Dillon's home. Authorities did not link them to Dillon until he had sent a letter to the local paper. After the FBI had put together a criminal profile of the killer, a friend of Dillon's brought him to the attention of the authorities, which in my mind at least is nearly identical to the story of William Afton. The amount of the first victims, the authorities only investigating the murders after they got tipped off by a friend of the killer, in Afton's case that being Henry, and eventually you'll see that there are quite a few similarities to multiple real people, and it's scary. At least when people compare me to Afton, it's because I wear purple. Halfway through, into number 5, Elliot Ludwig. Elliot Ludwig is a recurring character in Poppy Playtime. He is most known for his position as both the founder and overseer of Playtime Co. Elliot Ludwig is an old man with light skin, blackish hair, and an unknown eye color, probably brown, given that I think it's the most common eye color. He is seen wearing a suit during the first VHS tape in the beginning of Chapter 1, A Tight Squeeze, which seems to be an old Playtime Co commercial for Poppy herself and for the factory tours that were once held there, where in this video he is engulfed in purple light, which is certainly an interesting moment, one that I even pointed out in our Poppy Playtime playthrough video. Not to mention the whole he puts people in toys thing, like how William put people in animatronics, plus Elliot probably put his daughter into Poppy, much like how Afton's daughter Elizabeth ended up becoming Circus Baby, and then Elliot sealed his daughter away, and Afton put Baby in Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, which we visit in sister locations, so yeah, like this. And at 4, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was an American serial killer who killed at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospital and charitable events as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown, personas that he had devised. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public service as a clown prior to the discovery of his crimes. Gacy committed all of his murders inside of his ranch house. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and then dupe them into donning handcuffs with the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. And while this is absolutely disgusting and makes me sick to my stomach, there are still a few similarities to Afton. Killing in a place that's related to you, for instance, Gacy, it was his home, and for Afton it's his business. The target demographic was also the same with young people, although Afton is a bit more diverse and killed girls as well. And while you may think that this is a stretch, even FNAF made the connection with FNAF AR through the clown Springtrap skin. I mean, come on, dude, if that's not a giveaway, I don't know what is. And finally, in at number 1, Robert Burdella. Robert Burdella is, to me, the seemingly perfect inspiration for William Afton. Not only did this man own his own business called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, where he reportedly sold human skulls, but he also seemingly started his killing spree in 1984. The MO is certainly not the same. Burdella would drug and kidnap men that he met in bars and on the streets, but the same idea of killing people you meet in a restaurant scene is carried over to William. There is no confirmed inspiration for William, hence this list, but there are certainly a decent amount of similarities between these two. In fact, if you combine like all the serial killers we talked about on this list, especially these last 4, you'll basically get a real William Afton, and I don't like that, okay? That's horrifying. But again, that was the point of this list, so it was a way for me to talk about FNAF without having to talk about FNAF, okay? I didn't go into too much detail with these because, well, I'm sure you can guess why, but yeah. Either way, I think that this is a pretty... The similarities are scary. That's all I have to say.
Number 10, Snorlax. Snorlax might not seem like a scary Pokemon. In fact, they are not creepy by their own nature, but if put into the FNAF world, this is a Pokemon that could be made instantly scary. I'm just imagining Snorlax as a big, lumbering, and imposing figure, as Snorlax kind of has that perfect large size and presence similar to the animatronics. For some reason, I can just imagine Snorlax fitting in with the other mascots and consuming not just one person whose soul would remain trapped inside it, but multiple. Just think of how big Snorlax is and how much it can eat. It's basically the Pokemon version of a giant bear. Of course, at least after it had sated its hunger, it would probably be pretty easy to escape as it would likely get pretty sleepy, but before then, it would be a terrifying beast to battle in the FNAF-verse. Number 9. Mimikyu. Mimikyu is a fitting type of Pokemon for FNAF, being that it is a ghost type, one of the scariest types. Also, Mimikyu likes to hide its appearance already in a kind of suit. Okay, not really like an animatronic suit, more like a rag, but still, there are some parallels here. We don't actually know what the original Mimikyu looks like under the rag because it always keeps itself hidden, its eyes peering out through its disguise at us. Kind of like the souls, or like the true murderous intentions perhaps, living within the animatronics. Of course, I don't think Mimikyu is as sinister with its intentions as a FNAF animatronic is, but if it were considered one of the team in the FNAF-verse working alongside Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy, then mayhaps that would change. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are enjoying this list and you want more crossover lists like it, let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Alakazam. For some reason, when it comes to Alakazam, I can imagine a whole attraction at Freddy's featuring this Pokemon. Stay with me here. Something we haven't seen yet is some kind of fortune-telling animatronic, despite the fact that fortune-telling animatronics can be a staple at fairs and various entertainment venues. Whenever I see one of these, I'm always myself inclined to ask a question, enter some coins, and get my fortune told by a robo-fortune teller. Alakazam could fit this mold perfectly, and while Alakazam maybe isn't that scary to look at, psychic types are always pretty frightening to fight against. Also, I feel like Alakazam was one of the Pokemon that I was most afraid of when I was a kid.
And it's 7, Burke and Hare. The Burke and Hare murders were 16 serial killings committed over a period of about 10 months in 1828 in Edinburgh, Scotland. The two men who committed these killings, last names Burke and Hare, were doing it because they also sold the corpses to Robert Knox for dissection at his anatomy lectures. There's actually a shortage of corpses in Edinburgh, and thus people actually started grave robbing and selling the corpses rather than selling the possessions, since a loophole in the system only considered it a theft if the body was taken with its clothes. Naked corpses were fine to take though, apparently. They didn't really think that one through. These two were killing in the name of science, something that we suspect William was doing as well. However, they actually were, in a messed up way, contributing to the furthering of science, whereas William is only doing it for his own selfish reasons and to become immortal. After Hare was given immunity to confess to the murders so that they could convict Burke, Burke was sentenced to death. Shortly afterwards, his corpse was dissected and his skeleton was displayed at the Anatomical Museum of Edinburgh Medical School, where, as of 2021, it actually still remains. Oh, and by the way, the reason they're known as Burke and Hare was because both of their first names are William. Yeah. So maybe Afton's wife is named something similar. Halfway through into number 5, Arthur Gary Bishop. Arthur Gary Bishop was an American serial killer in 1983, and as a result of a routine police investigation, he confessed to the murders of 5 young boys between 1979 and 1983. Bishop was born in Hinckley, Utah, and was the eldest of 6 brothers. Bishop was raised as a devout Latter-day Saint, Mormon, and was an Eagle Scout and an honor student, which is already suspicious in comparison to Afton, given that Afton was also regarded as intelligent given his talent for animatronics, especially in the 80s, and his passion for business. But not only that, Bishop also operated under an alias. Bishop was arrested for embezzlement in February of 1978 and given a 5-year suspended sentence, but he skipped his parole and fled to Salt Lake City, living under the alias of Roger Downs. Under this alias, Bishop would then kill 5 boys between 1979 and 1983. It's also interesting that multiple key dates in Bishop's life line up closely to releases of FNAF games. On July 14th, 1993, he was arrested, and FNAF 4 came out on July 23rd, 9 days after that. Well, not in the same year, but you know what I mean. Bishop's first kill was on October 14th, 1979, and Sister Location was released on October 7th. I mean, it's not concrete, but it's certainly interesting. Plus, also he was caught in 1983, the same year that Crying Child was bit.
Number 3, Haunter. I don't don't usually highlight Haunter as much when I'm talking scary Pokemon, even if I'm talking about ghost Pokemon. And recognizing how left out this Pokemon might feel, I decided I should include it on this list, where it's actually a completely perfect fit based on its modus operandi. It would fit perfectly in FNAF 3, where we are plagued by the real-life animatronic of Springtrap, as well as non-physical hallucinations and ghosts. Haunter itself is non-corporeal, meaning that it has no physical and solid body, but is instead an immaterial ghost and poison type Pokemon, which can drift through walls. Ooh, spooky. Haunter is also known for trying to spook its victims. It generally lurks in the dark, urging those who pass to come nearer before unleashing its toxic tongue on them. Just saying, I can already see the jump scare in my mind. A lick from Haunter will ultimately result in seizures followed by death. Seems like it would fit really well in FNAF. It has a jump scare and then you die. I'm just saying. Number 2, Genesect. Genesect is a modified fossil type made into basically a robot. It's a steel and fossil type Pokemon in its current incarnation. Genesect was resurrected from a fossil, but was technologically improved upon by Team Plasma. And in its original form as a fossil type, Genesect has a history of being known for being a hunter. What more do you need to know here? An instinctive hunter Pokemon who was originally something more organic and is now more machine than anything else. This seems to fit all too well with the world of FNAF. Not only would Genesect fit in, they would also likely be just as, if not more, terrifying than some of the original animatronics. I don't think I want to live in a world where Pokemon are inherently murderous as opposed to being inherently wild or friendly. Sounds scary. Number 1, Drifloon. Does it get any more thematic than this? Drifloon is literally a Pokemon known for stealing away children who see it as a regular balloon. It's like if Balloon Boy had a balloon that was just as deadly as any of the other animatronics at Freddy's Pizza. In fact, that is probably who I would partner Drifloon up with, were it to be included in the FNAF verse. It would make the perfect companion or sidekick to Balloon Boy. In fact, Drifloon is so spooky, it might actually end up becoming sort of the main antagonist between that duo. And of course, in case you were wondering, Drifloon is itself a ghost and flying type Pokemon, who of course happens to look like a balloon.